Well, hello, class. Welcome to the middle of Unit 4. Hope your week is off to a good start. I just had a pretty scary, challenging experience, and it made me realize how fortunate we are to have individuals like yourselves training to be licensed counselors to meet individuals sometimes in their darkest moments. And so I felt, although I knew what I was doing, I felt equipped and capable. All the while, I was thinking we need to get you to somebody who's been trained to actually deal with some of these more challenging times and issues that I'm not capable of doing to the best of my ability. We can talk, we can pray, we can ask questions, we can make small talk, but I need to get you to professionals. So it just made me realize how grateful I am that we all have different functions, we all have different roles and talents and skills, and so was just reminded of how grateful I am for the work that's happening in our program that are preparing you all to work with future clients or current clients and helping them, in a lot of their challenging times in life. So grateful for what you do. Hey, so I want to just really briefly, maybe in the next 10 minutes or so, talk about some questions, okay? And I actually want to talk about, let's do a couple of them, okay? So one of the questions I saw on there had to do with some discussion about childhood career development. Okay, so and what role does a lot of theory and different things play when it comes to how our children will see things and how that will affect us long term as we get into adulthood and so forth, as we think about career. And so I think about this a lot because I have 4 young kids. I think I've mentioned that before. I've got a 3-year-old, almost 5-year-old, 7-year-old, and an 8-year-old. So 4 kids, 5.5 years, crazy household, a lot of fun. And I think about how they view the world. Okay, so what's their world view and how do they view work? I think we all realize that they see things. So my kids know where I work. But if you were to ask them what I do, I don't think they could fully understand that because I even have a hard time explaining what all I do sometimes. My wife has a hard time explaining what all I do sometimes because I do a number of different things. And yes, I'm a teacher, but I do so much more than just that. So I was thinking about that and some conversations that I've had even with my children in the past. And so things they observe. So we go to football games and we see, they make these observations like, hey, Daddy, I noticed that it's all, they'll say things like, it's all boys playing football, it's all girls as cheerleaders. Okay, so you're observing that, okay? So does that mean that we can't have boys as cheerleaders and girls on the football team? No, it doesn't mean that. But what they're seeing is, okay, so Maggie, I'm going to be a cheerleader, and Sam's going to be a football player. Now, we're not trying to confuse things with that, but that's just that these are observations. Okay, so that's one thing, and that's the student. Their job is to be a student, and then they're an athlete. Their job is to be a student, and then they're an athlete, right? So they're making observations. So I started to think about that. What else do my kids observe? What do they think about from certain jobs can be only for certain people, right? Do they think about that? And how does that then stay with them? So these are some of the questions that I'm asking you is what are some biases that perhaps you brought in because you've been told that certain things you can do or you can't do, or you've seen people that have said, hey, that person can't do that or that person can do that. Or there's, these boxes that we have to fit in, or certain demographics or cultures or ethnicities or genders can or can't do certain things. Well, that starts somewhere. Right? It starts at a young age when we see things, we observe things. And then I was having a conversation with a student, and they were saying, I think that because this is happening in my life, people are viewing me a certain way. And I was like, well, hold on a second. You don't know that they're viewing that. This is something that you are allowing to kind of take over your thought and say, this is what's happening. But I think what that does, it proves to me that the more time we dwell with something, we stay with an idea, well, only certain fill-in-the-blanks can be certain fill-in-the-blank jobs, and we don't actually wrestle with that, those then become our reality. So we're actually going to skip, and I didn't make it really a note in our text, but we're going to skip chapters 12, 13, and 14 in our book, okay, in the Anderson and Van He text. And it pains me to skip chapters, it really does, because I think that, again, I've mentioned this before, but I think this book is just so good. The content is so rich. And I've been looking. I really have been. I'm looking for a cheaper book. Oh, please let me find a cheaper book. I just can't do it. I can't find one that's better quality than what we're looking at here, okay? So we're skipping 12, 13, and 14. And the reason that we're doing that is because I've made an executive decision, and My thought is that probably for the vast majority of students in this class, in our programs, you are not going to end up working with elementary school, middle school, or high school. Maybe you will, but I think by and large, most of our folks won't. Okay, but here's what I want to say. I want to encourage you as you think about these questions with childhood specific career development related issues. Spend time in these chapters, right? So I was talking with a former student of mine this morning, and he took a class in a different psych program, an org psych program, but I think it's still relevant, the conversation. We were talking about a certain class he took on change. And we were looking through the book, and I said, hey, did you spend time in this chapter on how to deal with government and healthcare? He said, no, we skipped that chapter. And I said, okay. So it's interesting because he was telling me he just got a new job. He's going to work as a consultant. He's going to work with now largely government municipalities and entities. And I said, so you skipped that chapter. You might want to go back and he's probably going to end up working with healthcare industry as well. So you might want to go back and read that chapter because it's going to be very relevant. So just because we don't cover it in the class doesn't mean that we shouldn't read it. So I want to encourage you to go back and read chapters 12, 13, and 14 on your own time. Because I think it's going to be very valuable content. Okay, so it speaks a lot about the childhood developmental process. Okay, so that's one kind of larger question. I saw a lot of different elements and aspects of questioning being asked with regard to that. Okay, so let's look at this. There's a question: can these assumptions made in the developmental theory be applied cross-culturally or to individuals with special needs? Okay, so let's talk about this, and actually let's think about this even in a different way. Let's think about this. How would I want to say this? So I was talking with a colleague of mine who's doing his dissertation research right now on college access to underserved populations. Okay, and so we started to talk about this reality that we have career choice. For the most part, in America, we have choice of career. Not everybody does, though. And I think that's an interesting thing for us to think about. So we talk about these ideas when it comes to career development, maybe you've heard the famous quote by Frederick Buechner. So calling is finding the place where the world's deepest needs and your deepest longings meet, or your heart's, your most heartfelt desires or passions or excitement where they connect. So the world has lots of needs, but not everybody in the world gets to find work that meets their heart's deepest wishes and desires and hopes and dreams, the place they love to be. So I think when we start to talk about career development, we do have to think culturally. We do have to think, are there certain jobs that certain people cannot do? And then I think we need to ask the question, if we're told yes, let's ask the question, why? Why are there certain jobs that certain people can or cannot do? Okay, so culturally, so let's think about that. So culturally, if we're here in America, we have choice. I watched a video a number of years ago, and we've used it in other classes, about a gentleman, family, husband, and father in India who has a $600 debt. Okay, that he will never pay off. He works in a rock quarry, cracking rocks, and this debt will literally stay not just with him, but with his sons and with their entire lineage, their family lineage, for the rest of time. They will, because of the interest and the lack of money that's paid. So he is in modern day bondage, modern day slavery because of this money. This individual has no choice, right? Has no choice in what job he wants to do. Because if he leaves, then he's still got this debt that he owns to the rock quarry owner, or I guess you can say the slave owner. So much so that they asked his sons in this video. Maybe you've seen it, it's called 58. And they asked the son. They pan over to the son. They said, "What do you hope for? Essentially, what do you dream about?" And the oldest son says, just pan, dead face. Deadpan, that's what it is. He says, what are dreams? I don't have any dreams. I don't even know what that is, because he knows that his plight in life is that he's going to continue to work And when his dad dies, he will continue to work in this rock quarry, paying off the debt that his dad has. So can these developmental theories be applied cross-culturally? In many ways, yes. In many ways, no. Um, and so is that right that individuals in modern day slavery? No, not at all. Not at all. So then we go back to this idea of the emancipatory communitarian approach, and what role do we play? So if we're saying that certain people with special needs can't do these jobs, why? Is that accurate? If we're saying that cross-culturally these certain cultures can't have this job, let's ask the question why. And if the rules or the unspoken policies in place are wrong, let's fix them, right? So I think that we have theoretical frameworks, we have techniques, right? We have these approaches to the work we do, and sometimes we say it's because it's we value this because we measure it, but are we measuring what's valuable, or are we only valuing what's measurable, right? And are we saying, well, that's just what everybody else is doing? Well, that's a terrible reason to keep doing it. So we look at things, and I think these questions that you're getting at are valuable questions. Are they? And if not, if these assumptions cannot be applied or are applied, or those different realities, if they're wrong, let's look what we do to change them. Because ultimately, we're looking at how do we best serve our clients? How do we help them achieve work? How do we help them achieve jobs? These are really important questions. And I think that sometimes you just go, I don't know if that's right. And so you work to change things. So these are complex questions, complex issues as we're talking about developmental processes. We're talking about cultural issues. We're talking about gender issues. We're talking about special needs. We're talking about underserved populations. And so here again, it's this idea that our client base can be so different, and our client needs are so different. And so I hesitate to say it's this one size fits all reality. And I know that for some that's hard to say. Yes, I totally understand that. Thinking like, I love ambiguity. That's amazing. I love there's no, hard and set answers. Some people are like, no, I want hard and set answers. I want to know that 2 + 2 = 4. I have to know that. And yet we know there's some gray areas here. There's some challenging things that aren't cut and dry. And then the question is, are we prepared to best serve those clients, right? I think that's why this class, even though it's the one class you might take ever in this topic, it's so valuable because it's giving you so many tools. And I think that it's one of those things you'll think, we'll thank them later type things. Like, okay, I got to answer those case studies again. But now you know. And perhaps for the first time you know what you didn't know. And so now you know what you know. Another question is, what do you do with what you know now that you know it, right? And so you hold on to these truths. You hold on to these realities, and you go, I may never use that. Or maybe I'll only use it once, but at least I now know about it. And it's going to better inform the way that I work with clients in the future. Let me answer one last question, okay? And I'm going to be very brief here. Where does faith fit into satisfaction? Okay, does faith affect a person's overall satisfaction in work and home experiences? I would say, very simply, absolutely yes. Because for people of faith, we are working for something bigger than ourselves. I think of James, where it says, consider it pure joy when you experience trials of many kinds. So I heard a talk by a guy this past summer at a seminary class I took, and the talk was titled, Is the reason that you want to leave your job perhaps the very reason God has you there? If we are living for something bigger than ourselves, I can find meaning. I can interject meaning into something because I know that this is actually for my good. It may be challenging, it may be hard, I may loathe it, but I'm trusting that God has something bigger and better for me. So does faith affect a person's overall satisfaction? Absolutely yes. And here's the last thing I'll say. There needs to be more research here. So when we get to the end of our time, what else needs to be studied? This is it, I would say. One of the areas anyway. So great questions. Keep them coming. I'll see you online.